Today we are saving and removing favorites so we can heart images we like in this test app. We can scroll through this contacts list. And if you're looking to make the next Instagram, this may be a start for you, but I was thinking just about my contacts in my phone and where I can put stars or hearts on them as well. Okay guys, I've got Visual Studio Code on the left and a new folder open. And on the right I've got Chrome open in DevTools, and I'm showing a mobile view here for my contacts list that we're going to make into favorites to check and uncheck with the little hearts in the corner. So we'll start here with a new index file, index.html, and there we'll start with an IMID abbreviation. And I'll probably go ahead and expand this to cover this up for just a little bit. And you can see here in the document, I'll just put favorites as the title. We're not going to put too much here in the HTML. Of course, we'll have a link to a style sheet, and the style sheet's going to be in css/main.css. And after that, let's go ahead and add a script tag, and we'll add our JS here. And let's make this in the JS folder, and it'll be main.js. And we need a type equals module, maybe. We'll see if I end up using a module or not. In the body, we're going to use a header, not favorites though. In the header, I'm going to have contacts, and we need to close out that header. There we go. And then we're going to have a main element, and we'll just populate the main element with our dynamic JavaScript. So that finishes out the HTML for now. Let's go ahead and create those folders we need. We'll press Control and the back tick to open up our terminal window. And let's do this just by typing make directory, or mkdir, and then we can type JS space CSS space, and also we'll need an image folder, so img. Press enter, and we've got all our folders. That's nice. And then we'll go ahead and add a file here, and I'm going to call it main.js. In the CSS file, we'll add main.css. And in the image folder, I'm going to paste in a couple of SVGs. So we'll have our like and dislike files. And now we have a like and a dislike, SVGs. And if you haven't worked with them, there's a lot to learn about SVGs, and I am certainly not an expert, but I do know if I want to change the color of, say, the dislike, which would be the heart that would be hollow instead of filled in, you can just go into the SVG, find the fill attribute, and here this is white. If you wanted the heart to be a black outline, you could just change this to the hexadecimal for black, or whatever color you wanted. Likewise, on the like SVG, you can see the fill. I've got a certain color of red here that fills the heart, but you could change that as well. So these can be modified inside the SVG files. And if you know more about SVG than I do, please go ahead and make your own as well. And of course, it doesn't have to be hearts when you like something. We'll fill in the CSS in just a little bit. Let's look at the JavaScript. So just a quick outline of what we plan to do today. We will initialize the app. So let's start an init app function. And we'll go ahead and make this an async function because we're going to be grabbing data from an API. So the first thing we'll do is get JSON data. And if we were making the next Instagram, this would be our own backend that we would create for that. But we're going to grab that JSON data from an API, and then we're going to render the data to the page, and then, not the DB, I'm getting a little extra help here, and then we're going to add listeners, because we need to listen for those like clicks or dislike clicks as far as that goes. So those are the three things we're going to do. And so then after we have that init app function, we're going to go to document.add event listener, and we're going to listen for the DOM content loaded. There it is. And we'll do our init app, and we'll save. And that's pretty much ready to go. So now we need to tackle each part of this. And the first thing we'll do is get the contacts. So here I'm going to define the contacts because I was thinking of this brief little app in terms of my phone where I have contacts and I can set some contacts as my favorites. And this will be an async await function, so we can await and get data from DB, which will be the API. So now we need to go ahead and make that function. Okay, let's define our get data from DB function. There we go, and it's an async function. And from there, let's go ahead and look at the API that we're going to get this data from. So I'll expand Chrome, and it is the Faker API. And it's got a lot of good endpoints for different information. And if we look at this, we scroll down, we can choose persons, and it gives us some examples. And there we go. We just want a first name, last name, email, maybe an image. So we'll grab this endpoint for a person, and I'm going to add a quantity flag on it. We'll just stop with 12. And that's pretty much all we're going to need from that. So let's go back to our code. And here we go. I'll close that terminal window. We'll define this const fake data stream. We'll set that equal to await fetch. And now we can put in our URL for the API. And I'm going to copy and paste it so I don't put a typo in there. There we go. And after that, we'll finish off with a semicolon there, and we'll define our JSON data. And that's going to be equal to await and our fake data stream.json. And then we're just going to return the JSON data, and it's got a data property that actually holds the other properties we want. So we're going to return JSON data from this function. Now I see a quick error where I've got 2 dots for the JSON. There we go. Save this, and now after this function, the next thing we're going to do is render the data to the page. And to do that, we'll call a function called render contacts, and we'll pass in the contacts we just received. So just underneath the get data from DB function, now let's define our render contacts. So const render contacts. It is not an async function. It has contacts. And from there, we can use a main, and we'll grab the main element, document query selector, and it'll have main. There we go. And then we're going to define an empty array, and we'll call it a cards array because each contact will have a card. So yeah, we'll just finish this out as an empty array. And now for each contact, so we'll use a for each loop here. Our contacts for each contact. And inside this for each loop, we're going to need to define some things. So the first thing we'll need is to define card elements. And then we'll need to define a person card, just one individual card per person. Getting a little extra help from this extension I'm trying out. And then we'll just push each card to the empty array. And after that, we'll loop through our cards array, and we will attach each card to the main element. So we'll go ahead and do that part right now. We have our main that we defined earlier. We'll call append child, and then we'll attach the card to the element. So what we need to do in between are build the elements and then populate it with the information from the people from the API, and then push each card to that array that gets attached to the DOM. So let's start with our create card elements function. So I'll define an element object that will be returned from create card elements. And now we can define that function below. Card elements, no parameters. Instead of the semantic elements section, today we'll use articles because each card could be republished on its own. So we'll set an article equal to document.createElement, and we'll create an article. After that, let's create an image element. After that, details. And our details will be a div. After that, a like, and that will be another div. Document.create element. I was getting some help there for a second. There we go, div. And after our like, we need a name, and that's going to be equal to an H2 heading. We already have an H1 on the page, so each card can have an H2, and then an email. And this will be a paragraph. And then we're going to return all of these in an object. So we'll have the article, image, details, like, name, and email. And that is our create cards element. And so what we get back is an element object. And after that, we need to create the cards themselves. So then we'll define a card, and from there we'll have a create person card. And we'll pass in our element object, and we're also going to pass in one of the contacts as we loop through each of the contacts in our array. So let's scroll below our create card elements, and we'll define our create person card. And like I said, it receives an element object and it receives a person. And now we will deconstruct that element object. So we'll have an article, and an image, and details, and name, and email. From there, we have details.className, and we're going to set that equal to details. And like.classList. That needs to be a capital L on class list, .add, and we're going to add two classes here, a like and a like-no. The opposite of that will be like-yes in the future. Our name element will set the text content equal to, and now this is data we get from the person, and we'll use a template literal string here, and it's person.firstname, then let's give it a space, and then person.lastname. The image will set the source equal to person.image, and the email.text content will be equal to person.email. Now we need to append the things we have created. So we will call, article, there we go, append child, and we'll pass in the image. And then we'll call details.append child, and we're going to pass in the name. And then we'll have details.append child one more time. And we'll pass in the email. And then we'll have article.append child, and we're going to pass in the details that we just populated. And then one more time, article.append child, and we'll pass in the like, and then we'll return the article. So if we break that down, we have the article as the major container for our card, and then we have details inside of it, and the details hold the name and the email, and then we append the article, or we append the details to the article, and then we append the like to the article. Oh, and we appended the image to the article as the first thing because it's at the top. One more quick typo. I almost forgot what I was deconstructing all of these variables from. They're the elements, and we need to, of course, have the equals out here and have the element object, or they would all be undefined. So we'll go ahead and save that. So we're deconstructing that element object into all of these individual elements, but they pass in much better as an object. Okay, with that function complete, we've got our card created, and so now we need to finish off this loop through the contacts by pushing each card to the array. So we have our cards array, and then we're going to push the card to the array. And from there, the array will be populated, and then it will attach each of those cards to the main element on the page. So now we should be able to pull this over, drag this down just a little bit. There we go, and go to our index page. I can right-click on that and choose Open with Live Server. And here we go. We've got contacts. And here's the only thing about the API. It doesn't give us the random image. We do get the random data we wanted. We do get an image. So if you're just testing out something you're building, this could be good enough, but I will show you how to get a random image to go with this. Okay, to get a random image, we'll go back to our code first. I'll go ahead and expand that one more time. Go to our extensions, and if you're using Prettier, if you're not, it's a great extension, but if you are using it right now, you want to disable it. We're going to put in some code, and it's a large file, and you don't want it to try to reformat that. So just go ahead and disable it. And it says reload required, so I'm going to do that. And with Prettier disabled, I'm now going to go back to the browser. I'll expand the browser, and we were looking at the Faker API, and that's great. If you use Node or you're using React and you use Node with it, and you want to use this same Faker library, it's also available through NPM, and you can find Faker. But once you look up Faker on NPM, it gives you a link to the GitHub repository as well. So if you click that, it will take you to the GitHub repository. In the GitHub repository, if you go to the dist folder, you'll see the faker.js or faker.min.js, and I definitely recommend the minified version. It is a large file. Once you're here, you have to click View Raw, and you get the huge raw minified JavaScript. You can press Control-A to select all, and then Control-C to copy all of that. And if we go back into Visual Studio Code, here inside the JS folder, we can create a new file, and we can just call it faker.min.js. Should have an empty file, and this will be large, but we'll paste in this faker.min.js, and it may take Visual Studio Code a little while to process it. I'm going to go ahead and save. With Faker now saved in a minified JavaScript file, let's go back to our index.html and let's link to that. Let's also change this. We don't need the type module that I talked about earlier. Let's just change it to defer. If you use a type module, it's automatically deferred. But if we remove that, we need to put defer in there. Here we can put another script tag, and we can link to that Faker file, js/faker.min.js. And from there, I think we can just close that out now. Save that, and back in our JS file, let's find the one line that will give us a random image. And it is where we had person image from the API. Instead of person image, let's go ahead and just comment that out. We'll put faker.random.image, and well, I need to spell image correctly, and call that function. Now when we save, and if we check back to our page, we should have, not this GitHub stuff, but here we go. We should have random images now, and we do. All the images have changed on the reload, and if we reload one more time, we'll get new images. Sometimes they duplicate, sometimes not, but they're just random images. And that's what that faker.random.image method helps us with from that Faker file. So the Faker API is great, and if you don't mind getting the same image for every request, that's fine too. But if you just want to have the different images, go ahead and use that minified library as well. Okay, back to our code. We still need to apply the favorites. Back in the init app, we needed to add listeners for the likes. And so we're going to call our function listen for likes. and we'll just call it right there, and that will apply the listeners. Now let's scroll to the bottom to define this function. We've got listen for likes, and inside this we'll define our likes, and that's going to equal document query selector all, and we'll select the class like that we applied to each one of those as we built the card. And now for each like, so we'll have likes.forEach like. Inside of this, we'll have the event.target. Oops, we've left something out here. Skipped a line. So instead of this, we'll have each like, and then we'll add the event listener. And now we'll listen for the click event. Now here we'll have the event. And now we'll have the event.target.classList. And now we'll just toggle the like no that is currently on there when it is first built with the event target class list.toggle like yes. Okay, after we need an if statement. Now we'll say if the event.target.classList, I need a dot there, dot contains like dash yes. Now I need that. Okay. We'll log to the console just for our knowledge, because we're not really saving to a database today. This is just letting us know what could be done. We're saving to a favorite, because you could have a very elaborate database or you could just be saving to local storage. It just depends on the app. But we're grabbing the data, and so we're going to call a function called getFaveData, and then we'll pass in the event target. And then there will be an else. And this else is once again just kind of for our knowledge that if we're not saving the data, we're going to be removing that data. And so I'm just going to paste this in as well, but it gives us a little bit of an icon. It says removing the favorite. And once again, we'll just call getFaveData, because really this is just grabbing the data, and then we can do with it what we want to after that. It depends on how we store it, what endpoint we send it to. So this is the front end code, and it would really depend on the app you're building. So we're either grabbing the data to save it or grabbing the data to remove it. And now this completes that function, but we have this helper function getFaveData that we also want to complete. So underneath it, one more function, getFaveData. And here, this will receive the element. And now inside this, and the element is the event target that has been clicked. So in our case, this would be the empty heart or the heart that is full, either way. And then we're going to define the parent. We'll get the parent element. Define an image. And we'll do a parent.querySelector. See how we're building the query off of the parent now, which will be the container. Query selector is image, and when I say container, that's the article element. Const name equals parent.querySelector h2. Get the text content to grab the name, the email, parent.querySelector. Here we'll grab the paragraph. And now we'll define the first name and the last name. I didn't capitalize that in. First name and last name, camel case. And we're going to set that equal to name and call the split method and split on the space. And that will give us the first name and the last name. And now let's define an object, call it faveObject. And here we can have image equal image, first name equal first name, and email can equal email, and then we'll just log to the console for now the fave object, but this is what could be sent to an endpoint or somewhere else. A couple of things here. I'm noticing I left out the last name as well, but I'm also noticing these both have image, first name, email, or these all three have the same name value and variable value. So what we can do here is just use that one name. I'll go ahead and put the last name in as well, but we'll have image, first name, last name, and email, and then this could be deconstructed later as well. Oh, now it's trying to close that function out too soon. There we go. No more typos. We've got the object and we're logging the fave object, and that's the last function. And just my luck, as I say, no more typos. I left out the text content here too. So there we go. Now we're getting the text from the paragraph as well as the text from the name and the H2, and that completes the function. Now, if we go back to the browser and we open up our app, it still looks the same because we haven't styled it at all. And so we don't have the styles in there to even put the favorite on the image to click it. So we need to add some CSS very quickly. And to do that, we'll go to our main.css file. Let's go ahead and make it so we can see the browser at the same time. So we'll bring this down here and we'll resize the browser. So now we have the application on the right and the CSS on the left, and it makes it easy to see the changes. We'll start out with our reset, which is a margin 0, padding 0, and box sizing of border box. From there, we'll just set the font size in the HTML element. And I'll set it to 16 pixels, which is usually the default anyway. In the body, we're going to set a min height, 100 viewport units, and a font family. This time we'll use, let me see if it can fill in for me, Franklin, there we go. And then a background color of white smoke. It's just a little off-white, and a padding of 1 rem. Save that much and we can see a few changes there. After that body, let's just style the H1 quickly. The margin dash top of 10 pixels. Text align to the center. Scroll this up. Let's define the main properties here. The display of flex, justify content, space evenly. And then we'll align items to the center. And flex wrap, we will go ahead and let this wrap. Save that. Okay, now the article element. Let's set a max width on each article of 300 pixels. Set a margin of 20 pixels on the top, 10 pixels on the right and left, 0 on the bottom. And yeah, we didn't even need to put the last 10 there. Okay, then border, 1 pixel, solid black. And we're seeing a few changes. It looks a little funky right now. Border, radius, 15 pixels. Box shadow, 5 pixels, 5 pixels, 10 pixels. And then a position of relative, which will help us position the SVG for likes. Background color of white. Okay, we haven't resized the images yet. You can see the cards start to come together. After the article, we'll go ahead and work on that image element. We'll put a display block width 100%. That resized it well. And then a border radius on the image as well of 15 pixels, 0, 0. Okay, a few classes to define now. We have our details, that contains the name and the email. We'll put in a padding of 10 pixels. Then we have our like. We'll give it a width, 48 pixels, height of 48 pixels. The position is absolute, and that is why earlier we gave the article relative positioning. Then we'll set it top at 2%. 0 would be right at the top, so just a little off the top. And then right at 2%, so just a little off the right. But it's not there yet. We need to go ahead and put a background in for the like yes or the like no. So let's go with no first, because that's how they'll all start out in our system. So we're not saving any to a database in this demo. Now we'll get our image and then /dislike.svg. And then we also want to set no repeat. And now we have our SVG in the top right. We got a little 2% off the top and 2% off the right, but there it is. But we need to go ahead and add the like yes class as well. So when we do click, that can switch out the image and show us the filled in heart. And so I'm going to copy this to make it just a little faster. And then instead of dislike, it will just be the like image. And now we should be able to click. And yes, everything's working. Let's go ahead and expand this so you can see the flex box work. Here's the full page. Let's go into the Dev Tools. We're in the mobile view, and you can see we saved and removed favorites, and it's logging an object here. There we go. Saving favorite, removing favorite, removing favorite. And that's how it's supposed to work. Well, whether you're wanting to build a contact app where you can mark your favorites, or the next Instagram or other social media, or maybe a comic book collecting app where you want to mark your favorites in that, it could really be just about anything you want to mark and remove favorites for, or mark for some other reason. And I hope this tutorial helps you out. I'll see you guys next time.